Welcome. This is a special edition of the Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast, The Business of Soccer. I'm Vanessa Perdomo. The summer of international soccer is getting down to the wire. The FIFA Club World Cup is in its knockout stages, and the CONCACAF Gold Cup has its finals set between U.S. and Mexico. A good old neighborhood rivalry game that will crown this year's champions of the region. Last week, I spoke with legendary broadcaster Andres Cantor about what a U.S. win for the Gold Cup would mean as a precursor to the World Cup next year. The previously taped conversation was before the latest round of games played for the Club World Cup, but he gave us perspective on how the tournament has gone and the biggest takeaways when it comes to South American versus European soccer. Here's my conversation with broadcaster Andres Cantor. Okay, so Andres, first thing is we're in the thick of the international tournaments right now. You're pulling double duty, Club World Cup, Gold Cup. First thing is, I need to say, how are you doing? Are you doing okay? Are you tired? Are you okay?
I am doing awesome. I really enjoy doing what I do, obviously. And actually, it's triple duty because I've called the FIFA Club World Cup in English for TNT and its sister networks. I am calling the U.S. women's national team matches for Telemundo in the same week. And then on the weekend, I have the U.S. men's national team and the Mexican national team on radio in Spanish for my radio network, Football de Primera. So it's going to be a very interesting last 7 days for me.
Yeah. How do you keep it all straight? I mean, does it get jumbled in your head at all? I mean, switching Spanish, English, Club World Cup. I mean, U.S. men's national team, U.S. women's national team.
And I will add another component, which is the speed I need to go in radio, because when I do play-by-play in radio, it's at a much higher speed, and I have to use probably double the words I use on television to describe the action. Yeah. It's fun. It's challenging sometimes because you have to prepare like two games at the same time. That's the reality. Like I'm preparing the weekend's game for the Gold Cup while I'm preparing the women's national team game. So it's a little bit challenging to keep it all focused and make sure that, when I put my notes down that I don't put some stats of the women's team in my Mexican national team notes or the U.S. men's national team in my women's, but it's fun. Yeah. It's lots of fun.
Do you have a favorite component to it, a favorite medium, TV or radio or team that you like to cover?
No, not really. I mean, I enjoy both. I've been doing television for 40 years and radio probably as long. So both of them are very different in essence because, like I said, radio takes a greater physical toll on me because you have to, go a little bit full speed harder than television, which doesn't mean that, I don't give it 100%. I give it 110% in each television broadcast. So I enjoy both calling games in both mediums.
You're doing your own sport up there for sure. So I want to get into the Gold Cup first. And what have we learned so far and how have the U.S. been playing in the tournament so far?
The U.S. cruised, but I don't know whether this team is good or not because the opposition was not the best. So obviously people need to understand that this is not near what Mauricio Pochettino will put on the World Cup debut because, there are so many players missing key positions. So definitely this is kind of a minus B plus team, not to call it A or B, but somewhere in between because out of this group, probably, I don't know, some will make it into the final roster of the FIFA World Cup next year and some will not. So far, the U.S. is shown some promise because they have been able to resolve the matches that perhaps before they didn't, even though the opposition obviously was much tougher. But actually, they need a good goalkeeper. I know that you were a former goalkeeper yourself, so
yes.
Maybe. Why not?
Yeah. I mean, bring the women's out there because we're always good at that spot. We're never lacking. Bet. Yeah. So what you're saying there, as we see what's going on next year, and then obviously, like you mentioned, it's going to be a different team in the World Cup next year. So does winning the Gold Cup even really tell us anything about what the men will be able to do in the World Cup next year, or what does it do for them?
It's a great question. It will build confidence in, the team as a whole. Obviously, will build confidence in some of the players that will have shown the coach that they belong for next year. That for sure. What will it do beyond that? I'm not quite sure. It's always good winning, obviously. It will send a strong message that, even without their star players, the U.S. men's national team can compete at this level, which will be obviously very welcomed and very good. Mm-hmm. Heading into next year, they will have probably the honor of being CONCACAF champions, but not much else because the World Cup is a total different animal.
Yeah, absolutely. And, U.S. Soccer Federation and billionaire Ken Griffin got together. They invested a lot of money, and Mauricio Pochettino. Has it been a good investment so far, do you think?
I believe so, yes. I think he's a very good coach. The U.S. men's national team needed a good coach, a coach that has proven himself, a coach that handled the biggest stars that this game has, like Kylian Mbappé, Messi, obviously, all the big Tottenham and Chelsea stars. So he's a very good coach. He is very flexible in adapting. I think he has been adapting quickly to the way we do things here. And he's trying to instill in the mindset of the American players that they can be at their best if they want to. And I think he brought that South American, Argentinian mentality into the team, and hopefully that will reflect on the pitch come next year in the World Cup.
Yeah, well, we hope so, for sure. All right, so shifting gears then a little bit to the Club World Cup. In your opinion, with this expanded format for the tournament, how have you seen it play out? Obviously we've had some really unchallenging group matches and, scarce games there, but then obviously there has been some really good competition. How do you see it from that perspective?
Well, I see it. At first, I had my doubts about, the tournament. It's so new that it was kind of, unpredictable. And I'm liking it so far. Like you say, in every major competition with so many teams, and this will probably happen in the FIFA Club World Cup next year with 48 teams, there will be matchups that will be, one-sided. Obviously, the Bayern Munich 10, Auckland City 0 is a testament to that. Then Benfica scored 6. But other than that, they weren't that. I mean, most of the matches were kind of competitive. So you will have, obviously, an emerging nation. I'm not saying that Uzbekistan or Jordan that made it to the next World Cup for the first time, will lose that badly. But obviously you will have matches next year, as we did see in the first round of this Club World Cup, that were one-sided. So other than that, I agree with your assessment. The competition has been very fair. And even though the two Argentinian teams didn't go through, for example, they competed against Bayern Munich. I mean, Boca was 1-1 until the 75th minute. River lost against Inter in the last 20 minutes, I would say, of the match. So, they showed that they could compete, and the competition has been fairly good and kind of even throughout.
I think that was, for me, the thing that I was looking at the most was South American teams versus European teams, how they were going to stack up, because especially here in the U.S. market, maybe the South American teams aren't known as well as you think maybe some of the European teams. So right now it's pretty much Brazil versus Europe, and obviously we have some others, and Messi made it through, and Inter Miami has the one MLS team. But do you think that a Brazil versus Premier League team, like a Serie A team versus a Premier League team, is what would be best for the tournament in the final from an audience perspective, from a competition perspective? Does something like that then prove, yes, this is what the whole tournament was about, competing across regions? Or is Premier League or PSG versus, Chelsea or something the best that FIFA can expect?
We shall see. Obviously, first and foremost, let me clarify something. Brazilian teams are not known to the Eurocentric fans because they never pay attention to this side of the world. This is one of my biggest fights, and I'm on record for saying that Copa Libertadores is as good as the Champions League. People laugh at me because people don't turn over and don't see the value that our South American football has, and I believe it's as good. Obviously, we don't have the resources, and obviously the South American teams lose their biggest stars every year, and they go to Europe. You named 3-4 European teams. Most of them have South American players that make them, win in the Premier League, in Spain, wherever. So that aside, what will be good for the competition? Obviously, now it's Brazil against the world, basically. Brazil has all four teams are very good. The Europeans are at the end of their season and are complaining about how tired they are and this and that, but yet, they showed interest and are competing well enough. So that will not be an excuse if they happen to lose to a Brazilian team somewhere along the way. So for a global audience, obviously the ideal final will be to have the Champions League winner PSG in the final, with all with all that happened with them in Champions League, or Real Madrid for that matter. Obviously, because that's a global brand. And it would be great to show like a balance of power if we can have South American against Europe final. That would be awesome.
And when you're seeing out in the stadiums and things like that, obviously Real Madrid and Boca Juniors were the two highest selling teams in the group stage for tickets. What else are you seeing, like, as people are bringing in fans? Is it a lot of South American fans coming in? Is it a lot of European fans? Is it just U.S. fans just rooting for whoever they know already?
It's a mix of both. The South American teams, including the Brazilians, brought a lot of people. I was really surprised at the amount of people that they brought from their countries. Obviously, in South Florida, where Boca played 2 matches and Palmeiras played 1, there are plenty of Argentinians and Brazilians, and I'm pretty sure went to root for them as well. But I would say 70% of the fans that showed up came from either Argentina or Brazil. Then you have the American fan that went out to see the big teams, Inter Milan, PSG, Real Madrid, Atletico de Madrid. I mean, you could tell by the support they had that it looked like they were just casual US-based fans of those teams. And I also said this, that goes in favor of the FIFA Club World Cup, that if you take this FIFA Club World Cup to Germany and play it in Germany, how many fans will River Plate against Urawa Reds in Hamburg, Germany draw? Probably not even 5,000. So I think attendance has been good, good enough. The big teams sold out. The South American teams sold out. And when you have a game on a Tuesday at 12 noon to adjust to the European primetime television audience at the Rose Bowl, I'm not even sure Beyonce sell out the Rose Bowl at 12 noon on a work day.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It is one of the things I wanted to ask you about. It's the scarcity that we saw at a lot of the stadiums. And I mean, it's a really good point, though. I mean, they're midday, during the work week. But we obviously will see that next year for the World Cup. But it's a completely different beast, right? For the World Cup, people are going to be willing to take off. So do you think that the scarcity that we saw doesn't say much about the U.S. as a soccer market? Do you think that we're still emerging, or is there some work to be done?
No, it doesn't say anything. It says obviously a lot about the U.S. soccer market. There have been 1.5 million tickets sold, or over 1.5 million tickets sold in the group phase. Again, if you take that Rose Bowl game and move it to the LAFC Stadium or Dignity Health, the Galaxy Stadium that has a capacity of 25,000 people, you would have had a packed and sold out game between, Monterrey and Urawa Reds, or River Plate and Urawa Reds that didn't draw that much. I think, obviously, like you say, the World Cup will be totally different. I know people that are already asking for time off a year in advance. There will be a lot more tourists, hopefully, coming to the U.S. to watch their nations. And I think soccer has shown throughout the summers, and I refer to the summers because we always have these big pre-tournament, pre-season tournaments that are friendly in nature with the big European teams that play 1-11 team. I mean, they put 11 players on the first half, and then the coach, because it's preseason, makes 11 changes in the second half, and yet you will have 75,000 people or 100,000 people in Ann Arbor, Michigan, watching Real Madrid against Manchester United.
Right.
So the appetite for soccer in this country is here to stay. Is very solid, and I don't think we have to dwell on the negative of the 18,000 fans that the Mamelodi Sundowns game drew, because again, take that to any other city in the world outside of South Africa. That's where this team is from. And that, it will not draw 300 people. And here they put, 15,000, and everyone's saying, oh, they only drew 15,000 people at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, sweltering heat. So, I mean, I think all in all is very good.
It's a good point, for sure. So we got to talk about the MLS really quick before we wrap up. Inter Miami made it to the next round with 1 win, 2 draws. The other teams didn't fare as well. What do you think that says, that LAFC, Seattle didn't even get a win or a draw, any points, right? So what does that say about how the MLS is stacking up against other leagues and how far they really need to go?
Well, we didn't need to have this tournament to know where MLS stands in the world scheme of football, in the world ranking of football. Obviously, the MLS is doing great. It's a very good league, but it's not competitive enough. And Inter Miami can prove me wrong, but obviously, they got Messi, which is the difference maker. But I think it's unfair because even though Seattle didn't win, the 2 Argentine teams played 6 matches in between them and won only one of them, which was River beating Urawa Reds. So if I make the argument that LAFC and Seattle didn't win too many games, or Seattle didn't win any, I would have to make the same argument for Argentinian football, and Argentina is the world champion. So it's, again, MLS has, I don't know if it has a long way to go, but obviously the competition is in Europe is much tougher. It's better. And, it's MLS, it's a couple of steps down from there.
Right. All right. Well, before I let you go, I have to get some predictions. Predictions for Club World Cup final and winner.
I think PSG will win this tournament. Mm-hmm. And they might play, I wish I had the brackets. I like Bayern Munich, the way they played. The winner of that quarterfinal, if it's PSG, Bayern will make it all the way to the final and win it.
Yeah, absolutely. Prediction for the Gold Cup.
I'm going to bet on the U.S.
All right.
I think there's 3 wins in the group phase, even though, like I already explained, doesn't mean way too much. I think will give them confidence to go all the way to the final and win it.
That was my conversation with legendary broadcaster Andres Cantor. We'll be checking back in on his predictions to see if PSG or Bayern Munich take home the Club World Cup title. This is a special edition of the Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast, The Business of Soccer. Up next, we'll hear from leaders from the Atlanta World Cup host committee on how they're prepping for the big games. I'm Vanessa Perdomo. This is Bloomberg. You're listening to a special edition of the Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast, The Business of Soccer. I'm Vanessa Perdomo. My next guests are Dan Corso, president of the Atlanta Sports Council and head of the Atlanta World Cup host committee, and Tim Zulawski, president of A&B Sports and Entertainment, more so known for owning the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta is one of only a few cities that are hosting the Club World Cup this year, as well as the 2026 World Cup next year. So they're in a unique position to solidify themselves as a soccer hub in the U.S. Not to mention, owner of the Atlanta Falcons, Arthur Blank, is a big donor for U.S. soccer. Let's listen to my conversation with Tim and Dan. Club World Cup, everything's coming in at once. Tim, I'd love to get your perspective on a stadium that's hosting both of these tournaments. What's this next year like for you, and what are the preparations like to host these back-to-back tournaments?
Ultimately, it's the vision we had for Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is to bring the best events from around the world to Georgia and to Atlanta for the people of the United States and or our state and local residents to enjoy. So it feels great to be bringing that to life. The actual matches themselves, we're the busiest 70,000 seat stadium in the world. So the idea of bringing people in is obviously not foreign to us. The working with a new federation, in this case FIFA, who we've not worked with previously, that has been a little different, just because they're first time and new. The Club World Cup, obviously the best clubs in the world, and then you get the chance for country in 26. So the unique thing actually has been creating that distinction between people or for people, so they understand what is coming, because also the 25 Club World Cup came while the 26 World Cup was already well under its planning way. Right. And so there's, I would say, some market confusion in general, but ultimately you're going to have the best representing club and country coming through Mercedes-Benz Stadium for America to enjoy.
It's interesting that
the world to enjoy, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting that market confusion almost, right? Because you have them right on top of each other. Dan, tell me about how that works, how you distinct that for the community of Atlanta and have these different tournaments, but make sure people are excited for both.
Yes, we've made it very clear that the 26 World Cup and our host committee, the Atlanta World Cup host committee, which is responsible for getting the community ready to host the 26 World Cup, we're not directly involved in the club. So we're supportive because it's the game of soccer and it's a big event happening in our city and happening at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So we'll work where we can, but we're not responsible, obviously, for putting on the logistics or the operations or the marketing thereof for the Club World Cup. But we do see it as a potential opportunity to kind of kick the tires a little bit on 26 and, whether it's traffic flow, traffic management, ingress into the various hotels that surround Mercedes-Benz Stadium, some of the activation areas that will be used for club. How do those respond in prep for 2026? So while they're completely different events, the fact is we have 14 international matches between 6 with club and 8 with the FIFA World Cup. That's a 14 matches that we could really learn from, and take the lessons from one and apply to the next.
If I could piggyback on Dan, what you do have in commonality is FIFA. What is not common is the consuming audience. So for the Club World Cup, and with the beauty of digital tickets, we can see where people are coming from. And Club World Cup's disproportionately domestic, where there's a full expectation that the global World Cup of 26 will bring, just that, the globe to the United States. And so who's coming in your doors is probably going to be disproportionately international than it would be domestic. So two different audiences enjoying the beautiful game, if you will.
And how do you think that plays into the attendance that you're going to see at the stadium and things like that? I mean, you guys are pretty lucky in the early stages of the Club World Cup. You got some really, really great matches and the MLS teams as well. How does that play in for you? Well,
in the case of Club, you're now going to have fandom. People follow and have a passion for that institution. Where that is, let's say you're a Chelsea fan and whatever their audience is that supports Chelsea, which we'll be hosting here in early June. Whereas if you're from the country, you have it's a completely different emotion and feeling. Are you representing the United States or are you representing Atlanta United? And so you're going to be a much wider fan base in the case of World Cup, whereas you'll be what I'll call inch wide, mile deep in club fandom. And so when Inter Miami plays, it'll be although Messi may broaden that gap a little bit, it'll be folks that are hyper-focused on Inter Miami, as an example, or hyper-focused on Chelsea. Much different when it's an entire country that they're coming in support of.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you see the pattern that you're seeing for ticket sales already, say for the Club World Cup, what are those looking like? Obviously some people are saying the tickets are a little bit, they're not anticipated as much as they anticipated them as. How are you guys seeing that in Mercedes-Benz right now? I mean, like you said, you have Messi and all these people are really excited for him.
Look, there's going to be thousands of people really excited to see the athletes that they watch every day, whether it be on TV or maybe even in their home country and in their home stadium. So a great show will be put on. FIFA's handling all the marketing and administration relative to these matches, so I'm sure they're going to do everything in their power to represent the Club World Cup, for the esteemed tournament it is.
And Dan, you talked a little bit earlier about just the overall, the Atlanta of it all, right? And it's such a big sports town, and noted already that it's not new to host these big tournaments. But I want to get back a little early on in the early stages of how you go about becoming a host city and why Atlanta was chosen, do you think?
Yeah, I think you could go, depends on how far back you want to go, right? So if you go all back to 1996 when we hosted the Summer Olympic Games, and now 30 years later we're going to host the World Cup, becoming one of only 2 U.S. cities to host both, Atlanta and L.A. I think the history going back to 96 and how we hosted the Summer Olympics to, moving ahead, hosting multiple Super Bowls, multiple college football playoff championship games, multiple Final Fours, All-Star games. We have a proven track record. And while that, we continue to add new events, what's not changed is the footprint. And, you've got an incredible stadium next to an incredible arena next to the 4th largest convention center in the country, surrounded by 14,000 hotel rooms that are all walkable, right? So your experience coming in as a media rep to cover off one of those events is pretty friendly, right? Your work that you're going to do is in a friendly environment, and you can get around pretty easily and never really get in a form of transportation until you head back to the airport and fly home. So same applies to sponsors, same applies to the visiting fans. So it's a very usable, friendly, walkable footprint, and it's something that we promote quite a bit. If you look at some of the other cities that host not just World Cup, but other large-scale events, they've got great stadiums, but they're also spread out all over their region. They're not compact like Atlanta. So you combine that compact proximity, it becomes very user-friendly, but also helps in the planning, so that when you're working on a security or safety plan or a transportation plan, it's pretty much contained into one defined area in downtown Atlanta versus spread out all over, the region. So that helps us quite a bit. But reputational value of being able to deliver to these event owners a unified, collaborative experience and planning phase with them, I think, is something that travels. They do talk. These big event owners talk, and they share information about cities. And I think Atlanta's just got an incredible reputation of just people who work well together, have so for a long time, and have got a great footprint to do it in.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think it is about, hosting big events that is really impactful to the economy and all those things? Because in recent years, in the last decade or so, some cities say they don't want the Olympics. They don't want these big events. So why do you think it's important for Atlanta and impactful for Atlanta to continuously host these events?
I think it's kind of hard to put the genie back in the bottle, if that's right. Once you get into the big event business, it's hard to get out of it because, again, back to reputational value, these events can only go to a handful of markets and they need to rotate, from location to location. So we're on that 5 to 6, maybe 7-year rotation for these major events. There's nothing we can't host. Just this year alone, we started off the year with the College Football Playoff National Championship. We've got MLB All-Star Game right on top of Club World Cup. So, within the first 7 months of the year, we've got 3 incredible events. So there's nothing we can't do. And it's a great economic boon to, not just Metro Atlanta, but the state of Georgia. You can argue economic impact numbers in some cities go really high. We tend to be a little bit more conservative on that. But what we do know is it's not zero. You have to have some type of impact when you've got visitors coming in who might not come to your city but for that event. And they're spending the money in the hotels and the restaurants and transportation and retail. It's good for our economy. It's also good for our small businesses in the area that reap the benefit of the visitors coming in and spending their money.
Mm-hmm. And one of the big things, obviously, as we look over the next year in the soccer of it all and the U.S. aspect of it all is Mr. Arthur Blank, right, who is big on the dedication of growing the sport of soccer. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that impacts what the business of soccer will be over the next year in Atlanta and his role in growing the game?
Well, Atlanta's had professional teams. Then came Atlanta United, which we signed on for in 2014, eventually rolling the ball on the pitch in 2017, setting global records for attendance, top 10 average attendance consistently, right? Then you look and say, what is missing? And we got a phone call from the folks representing U.S. Soccer, and they never had a national training center. So you played soccer. You know what it's like to have your own home gym, if you will, home facilities, and the right facilities to attract people along to play with you in order to put an elite team on the pitch. Well, this case here now, 27 teams will have a world-class facility to represent our country, regardless of age, because you're going to have academy, gender, male, female. You also have the unified teams, all having an opportunity to be trained in now a world-class facility that will be ready in the spring of 26. So you're helping on the national level to showcase soccer in the United States. You're helping on the professional level and then leaning into youth soccer, whether it be through recreation, programs of soccer in the streets, but creating free pitches in varied communities, or in the academy structure. So what we really ultimately want to do is create a platform where the young girl, young boy look and see their idols playing soccer. Because if they do, then it'll increase the chance that they want to play soccer competitively all the way through. So one of the also things that we don't often talk about is we have 100% acceptance rate from our academy players playing Division I soccer on scholarship. So if they're not making the pros, they're getting a free ride into, or full scholarship. I'll package it differently because they put a lot of sweat equity literally into that in order to further their own education and become contributing members of society. So each aspect is being addressed, ultimately elevating and showcasing the game of soccer out of Atlanta and through our means, Arthur's means, through his foundation, ultimately to make Atlanta and Georgia the soccer hub of the United States.
And that's interesting how they all work together in that way that you're saying. How do you think that the academies and the professional and the national side all work together to grow the business aspect of the game of soccer and ultimately help that and further value Atlanta United? Okay.
So I'm gonna turn it back to you a little bit on that question. You're a young lady. You decide to play soccer. Who did you look up to?
Brianna Scurry.
Okay. And who did she play for?
The U.S. women's national team.
Correct. Right. So you had an idol. And that was someone that you then admired and you wanted to see what they did in their lives, and you saw them highlighted and celebrated on a global level, correct? Well, again, that's where it comes back to. When you can create a foundation to which then people enjoy, once people enjoy, more investment comes. When more investment comes, then all sorts of business opportunities come along. So you see it going on today in the NWSL as the Women's Professional League is being spotlighted, more sponsorships coming in, higher attendance are coming in, new media rights are coming in. You see it in Major League Soccer. Preceding the World Cup previously in the United States, men's professional soccer didn't exist as a league.
Right.
Today you have multiple franchises, including Atlanta United, valued at over $1 billion, right? And so when you start and create a great foundation and you show that success can be achieved because someone that they can relate to. They came from my city, they came from my community, they came from my country. I can do that too. And then you get investment in it. Investment begets investment. It's like any other development you see, whether it be in a city or in sport.
Absolutely. And Dan, I'd love to know how you think that plays into the whole idea of Atlanta being a great host city for these tournaments with, Mr. Blank's investment into the sport and already having that national training center, what it's going to do for overall. And do you think that it gives Atlanta a unique perspective as a host city more than any other, do you think?
Yeah, it does, particularly for 26, right, with the U.S. being an automatic qualifier, and they'll travel out west for the group stage. We hope to see them play their way back to Atlanta as we get into our knockout rounds. We have a round of 32, a round of 16, and a semifinal. So hopefully the U.S. men's team will. But their training facility will open in April of next year, so preceding the World Cup. So you've got the men's national team embedded within our community. Tim's covered off what Arthur Blank has done for the sport in our state. And quite frankly, we look to parlay that into a potential Women's World Cup bid in 2031, which, as you well know, the U.S. is putting their hat in the ring for that. So, it's not going to stop in 26. We think the legacy of 26 could carry over into 31 as a potential host city for the Women's World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait.
Yeah.
I really definitely hope that gets solidified because the last time I was here, I was so little. But I remember it. Yeah. I remember it so well. The 99ers, they're icons forever. Dan, I want to know what your schedule looks like over the next year. Like, what are your biggest initiatives as 26 rolls around?
So we're in a really good spot. We've never hosted World Cup before, but we're a big event city. And as I said before, we've got continuity in the planning with the same organizations, working with the same venues that host our big sporting events. So, as a host committee, we're responsible for preparing the region to host the event. It's FIFA's event, but we're their direct liaison to make sure that we're ready to go, whether that's stadium or venues, volunteer programs, signage and decor, lodging, training sites, public safety, security, transportation, traffic management, you name it. There's a lot of operational things that we're responsible to help prepare with FIFA. That being said, being a year out, we're at a really great spot. And now we're looking at, okay, how do we really promote our city and our state to the visitors that are coming in? The draw is this December, as you know, so that is when all cities will know what nations and which countries will be coming into their respective cities. We've got 5 group matches, so we expect, depending on the way the schedule shakes out, we could get anywhere from 9 to 10 countries coming in for part of our group stage. So that's really when you can start tailoring your messaging, when we know what countries are coming in. Atlanta, as part of the Olympic legacy that we have Centennial Olympic Park, which was used obviously in '96, and we're going to use that as our fan fest for the 26 World Cup. But we also are home now to 76 consulate and trade offices in Atlanta. That's also a byproduct of hosting the Olympic Games. So we're engaging those consulate and trade offices in our planning so that when countries come in, we can match them up to those trade offices and have kind of a home away from home feeling once they come through. So, there's 11 U.S. cities hosting it. We all have kind of our different nuances and unique aspects of how we plan and organize big events. A lot of it is similar, correct, because it is FIFA's event. But we're looking forward to really kind of putting the Atlanta feel on it like we're known to do. Yeah.
I hope it goes amazing for you guys. Tim, as we wrap up here, I just want to know, obviously you mentioned that Atlanta United is valued at over $1 billion. As we look over the next year, I think that a lot of the excitement of soccer here is going to impact directly the MLS and the growth of soccer and the business there. Is there a number as a barometer that you guys are looking to hit as at the end of this excitement maybe in terms of growth for evaluation?
No, it's not held out as a number. I would say it's more a process. How do we leverage what is going to happen with the World Cup and expose the game of soccer to maybe today folks that are not paying that close attention to it, and invite them in to attend United matches in the future, and then have the fan experience in a world-class manner that we know we can put on at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, so that potentially more United matches, season tickets, on down the line, general fandom can be part of their every day. So we're really looking at the World Cup as I'll say an invitation to all those who want to enjoy the game of soccer, to enjoy it globally. In 25 they can enjoy it with club, 26 with country, and then stick on and enjoy it with Atlanta United locally.
That was my conversation with Tim Zulawski and Dan Corso, two guys helping to run the show for Atlanta sports. And that does it for this edition of The Business of Soccer. It's part of a new series we're starting for the Bloomberg Business of Sports as we get ready for the FIFA World Cup in 2026. I'm Vanessa Perdomo. Subscribe now so you never miss a new episode. You're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.